I share one guarantee with you on Super Bowl Sunday. This evening there will be two teams, officials, referees, tens of thousands of people in the stands, a lot going on at that event, and I guarantee you, if you look around, if you watch closely in the game, at some time you will see this. Yeah? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and whoever believeth in him shall never perish, but have eternal life. Someone, I guarantee you, at the Super Bowl tonight will be holding that plaque. Which got me thinking. I wonder what they would be holding in the day of Moses. If Moses was at the Super Bowl, which there wasn't. Okay, just making sure. What kind of placard would they be holding up? And I would almost guarantee, even though there is no scriptural reference, it would be what we just read. O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. You see, in this reading, Moses is nearing death, and he's preparing to pass the torch to the next generation, who did not witness the miracle of the Exodus or Sinai. Therefore, with all of his authority, he proclaims, "Attention, Israel." And the words ring clear 2,700 years later when we hear, "Attention, Church of Jesus Christ." We are now that present-day Israel in which Moses speaks, and he says two things in this passage. And the first is to love God. Love the one God, the one and only God. Now this command is known as the Shema, and it serves as the basic, essential creed of Judaism, and is the first scripture every Jewish child commits to memory. This love of God is a complete love. A love of heart, soul, and strength. This love is a single-minded, primary love which Jesus underscores in all of his teaching. I heard it said this way in my study this week. Love God with your everything. I like that. Love God with your everything. I have a confession to make to you. I struggled with this message more so than I struggled with a message in recent history. My desire is to come before you this morning and outline very simply how to love God completely, totally, and with everything. My goal was to summarize the heart, soul, and strength connection so that every one of us can come to the table this morning with complete love for God. I struggled because I concluded I can't. You can't. And that's the very reason we need a Savior. Think about that. It's the very reason we need Jesus. I want to share something with you. I'm going to quote. I wish I could give credit, but the credit was not there in that which I read. So thank you, whoever you are. Quote. This command seems to be impossible to obey. That is, because in our natural state, it is impossible. There is no greater evidence of our inability to obey God's law than this one commandment. No human being can possibly love God with all their heart, all their soul, all all their strength 24/7. It is humanly impossible. But to disobey only one commandment of God is a sin. Therefore, even without considering the sins we do commit, by our inability to fulfill this one command, we are condemned. This is the very reason Jesus continually reminded the Pharisees of our inability to keep the law of God. He was trying to get them to see and have utter dependency for a Savior. End quote. I look at those words. I can't do that. I can't do that. And I think if you're humble and honest with yourself, you would say the same thing. However, we are able to love God more fully in the midst of this human sinful state. And I just want to share real quick two very profound ways we can at least move toward loving God more fully in the midst of that state. And the first is to surrender. By the Spirit that dwells in us, begin to look at the ways we do not love God with all of our heart, soul, and strength. To begin to identify those places where we fall short. And be like the man who told Jesus, I don't need help with my belief, I need help with my unbelief. And come to God to say, I need help with my unloving. But secondly, we can begin to love God more fully only if we know God. We cannot love someone we do not know. I ask people all the time, do you love God? Yeah, do you know God? I don't know. You can't love something you don't know. So our highest priority ought to be, how do I know God more fully? Some of us are married. The more you know of your spouse and you live and you struggle and you care and you nurture and heal, the love deepens. Some of us have children. You love them more deeply. In spite of. Because you live with them and through them and nurture them. That love grows. Why would we think it's any different with God? Only by knowing God can we ever begin to love God, which ought to be our highest priority. And that's what Moses says. But then it concludes and says, and then. So we love God the very best we can with all our heart, mind, and strength, even though we are sinners, but we have a Savior. And then, remember the and then? Teach your children. To put inside of them all that God has given us. I love the saying, if you don't teach our children to follow Christ, the world will teach them not to. I would say over the past 10, 15 years, I have seen a present-day cultural myth that is astounding me, and it astounds me more and more every day. And it's this idea that it is best for our children to approach matters of faith, spirituality, and belief on their own. Let them figure it out. To allow them to figure it out as they move through life. That somehow offering them nothing will make it easier for them to obtain everything. And by exposing them to something, they will be forever tarnished. Friends, our children are bombarded with somethings all day, every day. And these somethings will fill the vacuum, will fill their minds and hearts if we do not Faith is not obtained by osmosis, but rather a deliberate, intentional method of teaching, supporting, and nurturing. I have performed the wedding ceremonies of several of you here this morning. And I shared in my premarital counseling all the time. You two who are about to be married had better come up with some truth. Because when little Johnny's 5, some of the questions they'll ask will drop you to your knees. And if you just shrug your shoulders and say, I don't know, he'll ask Johnny on the bus. Yeah, he'll ask Johnny on the bus, and Johnny will tell him. I would say at least once a month. Maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. But about once a month, I'll have a person come up to me, mostly a church member, say, Pastor Mark, why is it that your ministry is like what you and Lynn do is like laser focused? It's like church, the children and youth, the children and youth, the children and youth, the children and youth. I mean, why is that? Where does that come from? I sometimes as an adult kind of feel like I'm out there on my own island. Why that emphasis on children and youth? 2 reasons. First, kids can't drive. They really can't, and you don't want them to. They don't have an option of being here. Someone must take them. But secondly, please understand this, that the Church of Jesus Christ is always one generation away from extinction. This year, in 2019/2020, is the first year within our denomination, and it's not just our denomination, that the average age of the person worshiping will be 60. 60. We live in a community, check the demographics, that presently has a 60% unchurched rate. 60% of the people living in this area are unchurched. Do the math. Do the math. Let's take it out 20 years. Most of our church then will turn into 80-year-olds, and the 60%ers will move over here raising children that know nothing about the love of God. Do the math, my friends. Even Moses, 2,700 years ago, got it. Teach your children. Nurture the children. It is that important. And I want to make sure that we teach our children to have courage to be imperfect. Try that one out for size. Let's teach our children to have the courage to be imperfect, to provide an environment that challenges them to go beyond, to think more deeply, and even fail. Gasp. To even fail, but knowing all the time they are surrounded by the amazing grace of God. So at the table, as we come forward to conclude our time of worship, can I ask that you ask of yourself, as I will of myself, 2 questions. First, am I moving toward loving God more completely, more honestly, more openly, and without reservation? And secondly, am I doing my part to nurture the next generation? Am I doing my part to nurture the next generation of disciples?